Did you know that despite high inflation, high home prices, and high interest rates over the course of the last 2 to 3 years, about 16 million American families, or about 12% of the country, have wealth exceeding $1 million, which is up from 9.8 million families in 2019.
Who wants to be a millionaire?
And I'm fired up to just talk about this because according to the Federal Reserve's survey of consumer finances, there are nearly 8 million Americans who are multi-millionaires with a net worth exceeding $2 million. The mini millionaires with a net worth between $1 million and $2 million rose to 16 million people in the US. And who are these mini millionaires? Their income is anywhere between $150,000 and $250,000. They're not exactly the typical 1% earners, but they are considered upper middle class in the country. Now, you're probably thinking that $1 million is not that big of a deal anymore with inflation, but achieving $1 million in net worth is still a milestone that you should not just ignore. Even with high inflation, the increase in net worth for the mini millionaires still far outpaced inflation. And here's why. Because 90% of these families own stocks in different types of investment vehicles. That could be their retirement accounts or non-retirement investment accounts. And 87% reported that they're homeowners. They benefited from low interest rates before the rates rose at the beginning of 2022. The average mortgage debt repayments decreased from 19% in 2007 to 12.9% in 2022. And your net worth is your total assets minus your liabilities. Your mortgage is considered a liability. You can't just count your home equity out because you don't feel like it. You don't really own your home until your home is paid off, or it's owned by the bank until you do so. If you choose not to count it, then that's your choice. And I choose to include the equity of my home in my net worth. But ideally, I would rather have over $1 million in investments. But your assets will include every dollar you have in your bank accounts, brokerage accounts, cryptocurrencies, or equity in your home. Your liabilities will include every dollar you owe to the bank, brokers, or to someone else. And one thing I know for sure is that these mini millionaires became millionaires in steady and slow ways. And I became one of the mini millionaires at the beginning of 2023, almost a decade after I was in over $110,000 in credit card debt and personal loans, car loans, and 401k loans. I did a video of the whole timeline of my net worth, so be sure to check it out on my channel when you get a chance. The common misconception is that most millionaires became millionaires from home ownership. In reality, most of them became wealthy from investing in the stock market. They became millionaires from consistently investing and saving in the market, no matter what's going on in the market cycle. I talk about this in depth with my private clients. So if you're interested in joining my private client program, you can schedule a free session with me by visiting firesearcher.com/coaching. I'm not dismissing the fact that home ownership doesn't contribute to your wealth building journey, because it does. But the median home prices are actually down from the beginning of 2023 as interest rates climbed to 8% at one point. These high interest mortgage rates could knock the home equity down, but it's most likely not going to knock people off their millionaire status because they're still consistently investing into the stock market. You really have to pay attention to your net worth, not just to show off your status, but to know if you're too heavy in real estate or if you're too heavy in cash. And I knew a millionaire who once had over 80% of her net worth in real estate. And I once knew a millionaire who had over 70% of their net worth in retirement. You don't want to have too much of anything in any category. And when I started my financial independence journey in late 2013, which is exactly 10 years ago, my net worth was in the negative $60,231.57. And I kept a detailed record of my assets and liabilities every year. And another reason why I started this YouTube channel is to share my investing experience. And when I paid off my debt in 2015, my net worth was in the positive at about $25,000. But most of that was in the equity of my home, and I barely had any cash or retirement savings. And at the end of 2016, my net worth started to get healthier because I used 5 of those months in 2016 to fully fund my emergency fund and start investing consistently into the stock market. I had about 10% cash, 15% retirement, 5% taxable investments, and 70% in real estate. So I was still too heavy on the home equity and too behind on my retirement savings. So from 2017 to 2019, I focused on maxing out my 401k retirement because I felt so behind at my age at the time. It wasn't just a personal contribution maximum, but it was also after the after-tax maximum, or also called a mega backdoor Roth, because my employer's 401k plan allowed me to do it. So in 2017, the equity in my home made up 60% of my net worth. In 2018, it was only 46% of my total net worth. And in 2019, it was about 38% of my total net worth. And over 50% of my net worth was in the stock market. And then when I became a mini millionaire at the beginning of 2023, keep in mind that this is after the stock market got hit hard throughout the year. And I had 33% of my assets in real estate, 35% of my assets in retirement, 10% in cash, 11% in business, and the rest of them were miscellaneous. And if you want to watch the detailed video I did on my net worth update, check out this video and I'll link it in the description below. So how did my investments perform over the course of 8 years? In 2016, I didn't get to invest as much as I wanted because I was so focused on boosting my cash savings. For the longest time, I only had like about $1,000 to $1,500 in my savings accounts, but my retirement savings performed about a 9% return with my maxed out Roth IRA. I only contributed to my 401k up to the employer match in that year. But in 2017 was when I started maxing out my 401k, and I contributed a total of $54,000 with an employer match and after-tax contribution, or mega backdoor Roth. And it made a total of 21% return just in that 1 year. In 2018, I contributed another $55,000 to my 401k, with the market doing so well until September, when it suddenly crashed because the Fed, the Federal Reserve, decided to raise interest rates out of nowhere. If you guys remember, President Trump back then even tweeted that it was a terrible move by the Fed, but the market finished with a negative 4% return that 1 year. And I got to tell you, that was probably the year when the stocks were at the cheapest in terms of the PE ratio. In 2019, the market went insane after the Fed said, whoops, never mind. So I finished the year with a total of 31% return. And before the pandemic hit the US in February 2020, I had already decided to take a step back from my 401k and just max out the personal contribution because my 401k portfolio started to become too heavy in my total assets. I still finished the year with an 18% return, even with the pandemic hit in the US. And 2021 was another booming year with a 25% return total. And you know what? 2022 was a rough year with a negative 18% return, or losses. But I continued to invest when the market was down. I didn't stop investing because the market was down 10, 15, or 20%. I knew that some of these stocks were just dirt cheap and an opportunity, and I didn't want to miss out. Remember, Meta last year in October was less than $100 per share. Right now, it's about $330 per share. Think about that for a second. Because if you look at 2023, the S&P 500 is already performing a 21% return year to date. So if you look at how the market performs every year, it's been very bullish for most years. And 2022 was probably the most discouraging year because no matter how much I dollar cost average my investments, the stock prices just continue to fall and drop, right? But I believe in the long-term growth. If you could go back in time, I'm sure you're gonna wanna invest as much as you could back 10 years ago or 20 years ago. But what really helped my investment and how I increased my savings rate every year is right there between 2014 and 2016, when I paid off my debt and fully funded my emergency fund. Having cash set aside really made sure that I never got back into debt again. And I always had cash or extra cash to pay for any unexpected expenses. As my income increased, I increased my savings rate and maintained my expenses the same as much as I could. If you can get through the initial stage of getting out of debt and fully funding your emergency fund, your money will start working for you. Be in the market and don't time the market. In the next live stream, I'm going to reveal my investment performances for all the investment vehicles for the end of 2023. So be sure to subscribe if you haven't done that already. Is it possible for anyone to become a mini millionaire? Absolutely. This is coming from someone who once had over 6 figures in total debt. I used to blame inflation, the stock market, and the government, but it really came down to my financial discipline. I read a lot of YouTube comments on my channel about how people blame inflation, but in reality, it comes down to your savings rate. When I was in this massive debt, I had to first get my spending under control, and then I had to get my debt under control. And it was absolutely crucial to build up my cash reserves before I started investing because I didn't want to get back into debt again. And the rest was history. And I just continued to save and invest while I travel the world and have fun at the same time. So I encourage you to get my free financial resources by visiting firestateshare.com/resources, because those spreadsheets that I showed you earlier, you're going to see on my website are the same ones I used back in 2013 and 2014 to get out of debt and build my cash savings.